Hello everyone, welcome back to the Punk Rock Horror Podcast YouTube channel. My name is Mateo. You also might know me as UndeadMatt on our audio show, Punk Rock Horror Podcast of the same name. Today we are here with another Ravenous review talking about 2021's The Sadness, directed by Rob Gerard. It focuses on a pandemic that has taken over Taiwan, turning its citizens to bloodthirsty maniacs. What we focus on more is a young couple who is fighting and battling to reunite with each other amidst the chaos unfolding. Just to let you know before we jump into this, heavy trigger warning if you watch this film for extreme violence, for sexual assault, for decapitations, and everything under the gory sun that would fit under that as well. So seriously, if you are squeamish and just get, you want to throw up at the littlest sign of ketchup, this is probably not going to be up your alley at all. Now, if you are looking for that next test of metal and you're a gore-filled, maniac just like me, you are going to love this film. But let me get into it. Let me tell you why. As we enter the film itself, we are focused on our two protagonists, respectively played by Bernard Ju and Regina Lee. As the film opens up, we see them laying in bed, holding each other, being a very lovely couple. And they just kind of start out their day where Jim's getting ready to take Kat to work, only to be distracted by seeing his elderly neighbor who's standing on a roof covered in blood. His attention is eventually broken with the intervention of Kat and his neighbor Lynn. And real quick, what I do love about this film as well is the exposition throughout. It doesn't take time from the film itself to tell you what's going on. And I feel like that's a mistake a lot of horror movies recently make, or at least zombie films. It kind of actually treats the viewer with more trust to put the pieces together themselves. With news in the, news headlines in the background, people going on the internet to figure out what's going on. What you normally would do if a pandemic started taking over. Not that we can relate or anything, but with that in mind, we do see this film start to go on, and we see Jim and Kat, love each other. And that's what I also kind of love about this film, is that they don't throw any unneeded tension or any drama between our two characters. It's not like they had to overcome a certain battle within their own relationship to continue to love each other. And I feel like a lot of times horror movies focus on that aspect a little too much. And this just kind of gets to the point because, a zombie-like virus isn't going to take us backseat to Jim having to deal with his father-in-law. You get what I mean? So going more forward with that, we see Jim taking Kat to work. As this happens, we see the horror kind of start to unfold with bodies being put in ambulances. And when I say bodies, I mean like blood-covered sheets covering dead bodies being put in ambulances, seeing horror just kind of happen around them. And what's really nice about it is that it does keep it in the realm of reality, where Jim and Kat are just driving by, these accidents, these horrible acts happening in front of them, and they only treat it as just passerbys, as you would see a car crash on the highway. You stop to slow down to watch it, but you still keep on moving, and that's just how Jim and Kat act. So it's not like they're acting out of the realm of reality, which is nice. After Jim drops off Kat to the train station so she can head to work, he then heads to his local cafe and deli, which I'm going to say, because I'm just a sucker for these local type of shops, looks beyond quaint to me, and I consider it to be more of a deli, but you can also consider it a cafe. So random local deli shop in Taiwan, if you happen to see this video review and you recognize it, we're looking for sponsors. Now, that in mind, this is where I'm going to give you that first trigger warning for extreme violence as we are reunited with the old lady who was covered in blood. So again, listeners, if you're going to watch this film, this is going to be the scene that really gives you an idea of the chaos you're going to be seeing throughout the entirety of the film. So as we were talking about it, once they get past this deli scene where this old lady is causing havoc and ruining his coffee, we see Jim react in a natural way to what's happening around him. And I do like that because it is it does fit within the realm of what would happen if a, virus turned your local neighbor to a bloodthirsty maniac. And I mean that literally because I get it. Sometimes we feel like our neighbors are. But more so to the point is we see Jim try to escape in a natural way. Once he gets out of the danger, he tries to get in contact with Kat and try to tell her, stay where you are, stay safe, I'm going to come to you, some shit's going down, it's going cray-cray. I'm kidding, he doesn't actually use the words cray-cray, otherwise we wouldn't be reviewing this film. But going more towards that point of him trying to get with her, we see that she also gets introduced to her first exposure of the virus itself. And this is going to be that scene that, if the first one with the daily shot didn't, does make it or break it for you, because there is blood aplenty in this scene. Again, big, huge trigger warning for extreme violence, sexual assault, sexual violence. Like, if you feel like you might get triggered in this scene and you have triggers that are related to that, please do yourself a favor and either skip past the scene or have somebody that knows you pretty well watch it and see if this will be something that you can sit through. Because this is definitely, this even pushed it for me a little bit, and I loved, the Cross comic series, and I love Evil Dead and pretty much anything under that gore-filled sun, which I mentioned earlier. But with that in mind, I got to give that pro to the practical effects team as well, who pulled out all the stops for this film with bringing so many scenes to life, with using what looks like real blood, real body parts, real dismemberment. Like, there's some really impressive stuff on display that is kind of reminiscent of Scanners, really. Not to explicitly say it's the same as Scanners, but more so in the fact that they really did pull out the stops. There are some scenes of impractical effects to kind of blend together that practical effect impact, but it doesn't do too much to demystify the terror that you see throughout. Now, as Kat is escaping the train tunnel itself with her newly made friend, they do try to find a hospital. This is where we do leave Kat and her friend at this time and go back to Jim, who is trying to get to Kat. And we find out that the reason why Jim has to go such a cross-country journey is that some of the infected decided to close off the tunnels by crashing their cars into it. So a lot of the main highways have been sectioned off due to people, well, going bloodthirsty and losing their mind. So why they would want to cause a huge traffic jam, I don't know. I guess the worst things that some people want to do is just cause inconveniences for others. But we've never had experienced that, right? Kidding, of course. But anyways, sorry. I made the guys behind the camera laugh a little bit. So.
Why, dude? Why? No.
But continuing forward, we do see Jim have to go cross-country at this point. There's going to be a scene of a mutilation of genitalia coming up where he has to save somebody who has been captured by young teens who are part of a baseball team. It's a very brutal scene, I'm not going to lie to you, especially if you have male genitalia parts down there. Definitely made me cringe watching what happens. I'm being very vague about it because if I go into any more detail, we cannot put this video on YouTube. So, gonna have to see it for yourself if you really want to know what I'm talking about. But as the film continues on, we then see Kat get to the hospital. And this is where I'm going to put our next major trigger warning. So as this hospital scene does play out, it really does start to kick off with the president making an announcement here in Taiwan of the pandemic that's taken over Taiwan itself. Does kind of actually feel like it does carry a candle to that famous scanner scene where, that news anchor head just goes in such fashionable form. It does happen also here in this scene as well, as the president gets his head blown up via a grenade. Now, that is probably the most tame scene that is on display here, as the next happenings that occur throughout are very, and I really do mean very brutal. If every other scene in the film prior to this one didn't really give that away, this is going to bring it home for you, because what happens here in the hospital is so over the top and blood filled that everybody in that triage, I guarantee, would quit on the spot. So as this scene continues and we see the whole hospital go into disarray, the killer, the antagonist, or what serves as our antagonist, as the businessman has finally hunted down Kat and her friend at the hospital. Jim is getting closer to finding them. There is a twist in the film that does happen with our protagonists, but I'm not going to really explain what that is here, because it feels like it's a bit of an obvious twist that if you're paying attention throughout, that you'll kind of figure out what happens. And we do get a best bittersweet ending to this film that we can hope for, with all the chaos that is on display throughout. Now, at the end of the day, when it comes to the sadness, if you haven't been turned away via my warnings of how gory and chaos-filled it is, this is definitely not a horror film for every horror fan. especially if you're somebody who's looking for something a little bit more artistic in the way of, I guess you could say, Midsummer. This is definitely not going to be up your alley. But if you are a gore hound and you're looking for that next test of metal, then you want to go the route of the sadness. Give it a shot. Give it a try. Because it is at least worth the viewing one time through just to experience the chaotic, blood-filled nature that is this film. And I know I feel like I use those words a lot, but I don't really know how else to describe this movie without, getting this video taken off of YouTube. So if you want to check it out, I'm giving The Sadness a solid 5 out of 5 buckets of gore. For the terror that's throughout, I'm going to give it at least a solid 4 out of 5 ghosts. There isn't really much jump scares throughout because everything that is on display, it just gives you a front seat view to the entire time. But at the end of the day, again, if you're looking for that taste break of gory films and you haven't really got that, since Hostel, this is going to be up your alley. And if I was going to compare those two films, Hostel is definitely going to be on more of the tamer side of this. And if you felt Hostel was pushing it for you, trust me, The Sadness has such a trip to bring you through that by the end of it, you're either going to be glad you watched it or going to be watching a good palate cleanser of cartoons and puppy videos. But I'm not here to tell you what to do after the film. I'm just here to tell you to check it out. So please give The Sadness a watch today. And if you like this video, please like and subscribe. And if you haven't yet, please check out Punk Rock Horror Podcast wherever you get podcasts. We're on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, so on and so forth. Thank you again for checking out this video, and I will talk about horror with you next time. Oh my God, what are you doing?
I'm being a bloodthirsty maniac.
And cut.
Inconveniences.